Ladies and gentlemen, we now like to start the very final program of Part 1, General Q&A session. NTT President Sawada, and NTT Urban Development President Nakagawa, and NTT Facilities President Ichihoushi, well, three gentlemen will be here to answer your questions.
Thank you. We'd like to take your questions. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Thank you. We'd like to start the Q&A session. So let us start with the gentleman in the second row from the front. Thank you very much. JP Morgan, Tanabe is my name. I would like to ask just only one question. Mr. Sherwood, made a presentation at the very end, and he mentioned that he allowed entity focus on platform, not owning data, and that is why Las Vegas decided to offer this proposal to NTT as the vendor, because you allowed the city of Las Vegas to own data. Now going forward, when you expand globally, inclusive of the United States, when you pursue business of this kind, are you going to make it a priority for you not to own data, or is it just a one-off thing? Is it simply a result of concession that you decided not to get access to data but focus on platform? That's my first question. Also, in the past investor relations day, you talked about revitalization of the regional economies here in Japan. Back then, you also mentioned with regard to data ownership, I think you hinted that NTT was not that fixated or focused on data ownership, that you were more focused on creating a platform, if you will. I think that was Mr. Unoda's philosophy. So can you talk about the business here in the domestic market outside Japan? So can you elaborate more on the thought behind the city of Las Vegas? Thank you very much. Then allow myself to respond to your question. Thank you so much for your question, Mr. Tanabe. Yes, Mr. Unoda talked about the regional revitalization, Fukuoka, Sapporo in particular, especially in the city of Sapporo. He used to say that data should be owned by the local governments and the municipalities. That it's because our business model was B2B2X model. It really was a package, you see. So likewise, in the case of J-League, the football league, the soccer league, the chairman of J-League also spoke in previous investor relations day events. So J-League related data should be owned by J-League itself. And we would be the one to provide platform and the basis and the foundation. And that's how we were able to partner with J-League in the past. And likewise with local governments and municipalities. And the same philosophy was adopted for the City of Las Vegas project. So initially, it's already from the initial phase, we wanted to extend the B2B2X model on a global basis. That was our strategy. And that's what we felt, that data should be owned by the local governments and by the municipalities. And you talked about data ownership. It could be stored, it's going to be stored in data centers. And that's going to be housed in our database here in the data center in Virginia. So we provide the infrastructure, we provide the platform. Analysis will be provided by NTT, but the data ownership and the usage will rest with the local governments. That is something that we're pursuing based on our strategy, and that is what we're going to pursue going forward. If I could ask additional question, you're going to carry globally, and in your survey, are there many parties who do not want to disclose their data outside? So going forward, do you believe that? What potential do you see for winning such projects down the road? If you could share that prospect with us. Yes, thank you for the question. Well, using data to translate into new businesses. We have a totally different player with that type of. We have a totally different model with the type of player who have this type of business model. So we're not going to be in competition. We're already active outside globally. So data. There's a lot of will, such as in the form of GDPR, that many people want to keep their data locally. So therefore, it would be difficult for any player to gather all the data from global. So the data should be owned by the rightful owner. And many people really have come across, have become aware of this. So I believe that NTT really brings a very advantageous business model against this environment. Thank you very much for that.
Next question is for the gentleman in the third row from the front. Matsuno from Nomura Securities. The use of assets, which is included in the midterm management plan, and then also to make use of such, and that was really discussed, and in the press media, and 140 or 150 issues are really listed, and that was reported in the media. And in what areas do you see the challenges that you need to address, and also in order to solve all these issues, and what is the sort of the level of the solution? How much time do you think you need to really solve all this? And also the assets of your own, and also assets owned by the customers. How are you going to utilize all this? Thank you for the question. And what is the sort of how far have we come? And then there are so many global-wide issues, and there are so many of them. And the ICT can be of some help in some ways or others to all these issues, and that is a tool that we have. And basically, that's our thinking. And the real estate that we own, and the capabilities of Mr. Nakagawa and Mr. Ichihouji's companies, if we bring them together from our side, we think we'll be able to offer the solutions. And we are really about to start climbing a mountain. But various assets and also various issues and to be resolved. And for each individual issues, there are different sort of shades of tones. And while climbing up a mountain and the joint collaboration with FANUC, we have also reached to one level. But in order to really deploy that on a global basis, we have to really do more. So relatively speaking, it's difficult to really answer. But we are to really broaden the scope, and then we'll try to address all the issues as relevant to ourselves. So I'm afraid if I can really answer to your question, but in terms of the numbers, you will be able to deal with a large number of issues. We haven't counted it, but it could be more than 150. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question then. So shall we go on to this, the gentleman in the fourth row, please. Thank you. Ando from Daiwa Securities. Thank you very much. I have two questions, if I may. First, you introduced a lot of initiatives today, but if you have like a buzzword, a catchphrase to capture what you presented today, are you going to try to capture this with the term SMART? Is my understanding correct? And if that is the case, then how are you going to do your sales pitch? What is going to be the basis of your sales pitch? You probably have to involve a lot of parties in your sales pitch, but you talked about, of course, not owning data. You also talked about customization, tailor-made, and so forth. But is that going to be part of your sales pitch? And also, if that is the case, then how are you going to scale your operations, for example? How do you intend to secure efficiency in your sales activities? I think that's my first questions. Thank you very much. Then I'll take this question, if I may. And thank you for the question. Well, from Mr. Unora's age, we've been trying to pursue B2B2X model, and we've tried to make B2B2X model more concrete. That's always been a challenge. From the emotional sense, of course, it's the smart world. But the catchphrase for the business is B2B2X model. So what's the outcome and the goal that we are aspiring to achieve? Your value partner. That's what we are aspiring to be. We want to be your value partner. That is the basis of our activities. So in order to capture that, I suppose SMART something would be one straightforward way to understand this. So that's why we're focusing on the adjective SMART. I say thank you. My second question is an investor perspective question. Well, you have the so-called latent assets, latent profit. You want to realize hidden profit or latent profit. But what's the impact on your PL, profit and loss? And also, are you going to visualize this potential impact on profit and loss down the road? Could we expect more clarification from your side? And also, is this likely to have potential impact on your share price? Could we expect that? So if you could share with us your thoughts about the expectations for the future, how do you see the prospects? I would appreciate your clarification. Thank you. Yes, indeed. We will make sure that we come up with business plan and goal setting so that it will be conducive for your having high expectations. Now, indeed, as far as the real estate holding is concerned, yes, there are hidden profits, and we need to translate that into actual profit. And also, we're using not just our money, we're working with many different partners. And depending on the case, as Mr. Nakagawa mentioned, sometimes we may sell the assets, we may actually hold on to certain assets. So there could be a lot of potential variations. We might actually have funding from our partners and expand the pool. So we really want to explore and expand all possibilities. The business planning will have to be pursued from now on. But I hope that we'll be able to come up with the business planning which will lead to your high expectations on the part of our investors. Well, the real estate assets owned by NTT Group. And yes, there are a lot of potential. Yes, hidden profits, that is true. At the same time, though, we're not using assets in a way which can be accessible to the marketplace. That is indeed true. But then we started as a telecom company, and we're trying to incorporate ICT. And it's a matter of trying to incorporate ICT in our real estate assets. And with technological innovation and rationalization, we're now in a stage where we can utilize the available ICT. So how can we make sure that our assets can be utilized, which will create value for various partners? That's what we need to consider. And we hope that through such activities, we'll be able to enhance the value of our real estate holdings and our assets. So that being the case, one potential way of developing the assets going forward is simply to enhance the value of our holdings. We want to make sure that we use our assets which will be suitable for the purpose of increasing and enhancing our value. And also, in terms of, we also hope that we'll be able to expand the potential for properties on top of the property. So not just hidden profits, but something on the ground as well, above the ground level. Of course, if there's a hidden profit, it means that the property itself is very attractive. So therefore, we hope that we'll be able to indeed create something that can indeed be valued by the marketplace, create something that is suitable for the particular locality. And by doing that, we can have a property which can be leveraged and utilized by the people on the ground, and they will be able to achieve returns on that property. That is what we're aspiring to achieve. Have we answered your question? Thank you very much. Next question then.
The next question, the person in the third row from the front. Thank you. And to the O. And the two questions. The first question, back to the City of Las Vegas project. And just give us basic information. As of today, this particular project, well, it is on the level of the POC level. If that is the case, well, do you have the multiple year contracts or comprehensive public safety project? And what would be the terms and conditions that you need to satisfy in order to expand the scope of that project? Thank you. Well, POC is to started from September 28th and until the end of the year. Well, originally we were planning to last until the end of November, but there could be a little delay. And together with Michael and the commercialization. And after the POC is completed, we would like to really work on commercialization, and we have to work out the details as to the scope. And so we are going to commercialize. And so it's not that the POC is the end of it, but also that was some reference made in the presentation. And this is focusing on the safety and secure solutions. And from the very beginning, well, we are to really aim at establishing the flexible platform. And so we are going to discuss the next phase and next scope, other than the safety and secure. And then he has talked about the 6 initiatives: social, healthcare, or be it several. And then we have offered several proposals, and so we are to really define the scope of to what extent we can be of help, and then it could be leading to another POC. Well, thank you. The second question I have, and the announcement made yesterday, and IoT is to be added as the element to a developer, which is really catchy and interesting. And in order, I am having a difficulty in really getting the concrete image of what we are really envisioning. So the rent increase for the offices or residentials, and by the use of IoT, how are you going to achieve that? And if you could have some sort of promising projects in your mind, please share the information with us. Yes. For example, the community building and building construction and the use of IoT, and how to make the operation more efficient and to make it more comfortable. And if you have these workers working on the street, and then the lighting will be on and the air conditioning will be on, and to really make the comfortable environment. And we are really coming closer to some of the realization of this, and also, whenever we are to develop. And already, in terms of infrastructure, that could be developed as a common sense, and we are to really offer such an environment, and to really develop a comfortable space for the customers, and that would really increase our competitiveness. And also, if we have a larger number of customers or tenants who would like to come into the building we develop, and then we would like to really take full advantage of IoT, and to understand the people traffic, and also by having the facial recognition, and to really enhance the security level, and all this, how to make the jobs easier for the accounting people. And these could be utilized in various ways, and to really give a sense of the security, and also to provide a peace of mind. And the Las Vegas city solution, of course, here in Japan, gun ownership is not really allowed, and so there is a difference. And so the cognitive foundation is what we can refer to, and this could be utilized. And as Mr. Nakagawa said, what kind of sensors and how they would be combined together. And I think we do have a good sort of double achievement in terms of security. In terms of mobility going forward, we would like to really look into the mobility. And Ichihoushi-san has earlier referred to mobility, and mobility is something we are going to really look into. And already in terms of IoT, most of the services and solutions are combining IoT. And the Kitagami, the project that I have referred to, and the energy consumption status, and also the lighting and also air conditioning status could be really monitored in a remote manner from cloud, and so to really cut the peak and to really ensure the comfort. And then we will be able to adjust the air conditioning, and that's already been done in order to realize a zero sort of energy and emission, and then to really adjust the louvers and to adjust the sunlight, and also how we are going to combine all this to really reduce the total energy consumption. And we have made a steady progress. And also in data centers, we have the air conditioner, which can really automatically learn, and then to really have the specific adjustment of air conditioning. And so by combining all this, we will be able to secure the comfortable environment and to save energy and to decarbonize the society. And by so doing, we have been making progress in making contribution to the societies, and on a broader basis, and we are to really achieve more in a wider spaces, and in terms of mobility, to really have the more efficient traffic of vehicles, and how we'll be able to decrease the number of the cars, and so where the charging stations should be located, and from EV, conversely, to really supply the power, and that could be used as the countermeasures to disasters. And just the other day, this was the big earthquake in Hokkaido, and the leaf, they have they had leave, and then they were able to continue to use the power, and that was sort of the electric power charged back from leave. And so in order to really secure the comfort and also energy saving, and whether the EV has really been widespread or not, and also the question still remains as to the achievement of autonomous driving. But in a comprehensive manner, we would like to consider all this and to really seek the higher efficiency and to provide a comfortable environment. Thank you.
Next question, please. I think we saw a hand in the back, so we'll go to the gentleman in the back. Yes, we'll go to you, sir. Thank you. Mrs. Sumitomo Asset, Ito is my name. I would like to ask 2 questions, if I may. First question. You talked about NTT urban development restructuring or reformation. Oh, sorry, it's a review of the group formation or group structure. But what about NTT Data and other companies that are involved in IT? What's the difference between the review of NTT urban development and also a review of the IT operations with the NTT group? I don't have a full understanding. In the case of NTT urban development, you're going to carry out a TOB and really restructure. And then renew your business operations. That's the image that I have. But when it comes to data communications, my image is that you have a more soft approach or soft scenario. So can you comment on the difference between these 2 scenarios? Is there any reason why you needed to distinguish these 2 scenarios, Mr. Sawada, if I could ask you, sir? Well, thank you. When it comes to NTT Data, I think you're asking about NTT Data. It is not an IT integration. It is an integration of our global operations, not of our IT operations. Please bear that in mind. And also, compared against urban solutions or urban development, the OPCOs, in the case of NTT urban development and NTT facilities, OPCOs are going to be integrated. It is going to be integrated to carry out unified business operations. In the case of global operations, that is not the case. NTT Communications, global operations, and Dimension Data's correction is a holding company to integrate NTT Dimensions and NTT Communications global business. So structurally, there's a difference. So global operations and real estate business, there is a difference between the 2. Then what about NTT Data? It will remain as a data company, but the NTT urban development will be delisted. So there is that difference. That is true. In the case of NTT Data, the business that they're involved in are separate from the business carried out by other players such as NTT Communications and Dimension Data. So there's no need to enforce integration. As long as we have good collaboration, that's fine. So through NTT Global Holding Company, we want to facilitate communication. That is the focal point of this endeavor. Also back in May, there were speculations about delisting, and that really impacted our stock price. So therefore, that is not something that the market wants, and that is our understanding. So that is why we decided to maintain the listing of NTT Data. As far as NTT Urban Development is concerned, of course, one option was to keep NTT Urban Development as a listed company, but it is also an entity that is going to leverage our real estate assets, and it could lead to conflicts with minority interests. And in order to facilitate that, we felt that it would be better if we could make NTT Urban Development a wholly owned subsidiary firm. As was mentioned by Mr. Nakagawa earlier, we were going to start actual projects. So global operations will go through restructuring from this point onwards. So there's a difference between the 2. So there are several differences between these 2 businesses. Thank you very much for that response. My other question is this. So through opportunities such as NTT Investor Relations Day, you've been sharing with us your growth scenario. And that is, we really appreciate this as an investor. On the other hand, in relation to the growth areas that you talked about, can this really translate into profits? Aside from specific business models, I'm concerned about the following. 20 or 30 years ago, if we had Investor Relations Day in the past, you would have talked about mobile communications and broadband. That would have been the topic of the Investor Relations Day. Now that the mobile communications has grown to this extent, and it's already now accepted by the community. So therefore, it accounts for a large part of the consumption of the household. But now the Japanese government is complaining that the mobile prices are too high. They want to reduce this. So I personally believe the government is really exerting pressure on the private sector. But that's the message coming out from the Japanese national government. So therefore, you're trying, although you're pursuing co-creation, but if you're criticized by the government as being too profitable, well, investors are going to be perplexed by the situation when you're criticized by the government as being too profitable. So, Mr. Sawada, on this particular matter, I know that you're trying to really ride out the storm, being very patient and tenacious. But if you could kindly share with us your thoughts about this particular instance so that you can actually give a sense of comfort to those of us in the investor community, we'd appreciate such a message. Thank you for that point. Well, I think you need to look back on the history. There are always changes in the generations. There's a changeover in the generation. When I first joined the company, and we all joined the same year. 40 years ago, well, subscriber lines and fixed on telephony phones accounted for 90%. 30 years ago, it was 80%, but a few years ago, it is less than 18%. So therefore, although there was a lot of talk about transition to data communications, it was not that clear. And over the past 30 years, we have seen major transition, and the top line has indeed increased twofold for data. So fixed to mobile and then broadband is increasing, but the mobile broadband is now increasing. So what comes next? And that's what we need to envision. So in the world of mobile communications, we need to achieve more personalized solutions. That's what we need to achieve and realize. It's not just about mere straightforward connectivity. Up until now, we've been trying to monetize based on straightforward connection. It's only part of the picture now. We need to make sure that we offer more personalized services to each individual customers. We need to be a company that can tailor-made to the requirements of each individual customers. We just having wireless spectrum, and we are competing, and then charging high profit margin. That type of situation has undergone a transformation as the times change. So we need to talk about the next phase. So one of the byproducts, in other words, something that is beside the main domain, we see some byproducts such as the real estate. And we're now pursuing smart initiatives, and it is going to extend because we need to really transform the Japan nationwide as a whole. And various changes will take place, inclusive of the Compact City Initiative. And together with Mr. Nakagawa's organization, Mr. Ichihousi's company, we believe that we can indeed expand this market domain, and we'll be able to bear the fruits of that. And also, we need to be involved in global side of the business as well. Also, the other day we talked about the reorganization of the global operations. I know there are a lot of expectations. At the same time, we are aware of the low margins, so we need to make sure that we expand the margins. So yes, the downward trend of the mainstay of business, which is mobile communications. This can come down in order to safeguard the interests of the consumers, but it's important that it is our responsibility that we improve the overall profit margin of the group. So it is not negative. It's something that can be perceived in a positive manner. That is how I view the situation.
Did it answer to your question? Well, the next question, please. Yes, well, the gentleman in the very front row. Kikuchi from SMBC Nikko. And earlier at the very outset of the first presentation, Mr. Sawada, well, excluding your assets, well, you have the very 50 valuable sort of the properties. And if you could give us more the details on that, and to what extent, well, you have this the book value, and what you can expect from those, and also conversely put, well, just 50 only, and PSTN, and the shift to IP, and then as we see the progress, and I think in calculation would say just this one such property per prefecture, and I think there are no longer more of the telephone exchanges becoming unnecessary, and so what is the sort of calculation of this 50? Properties and the 50 and the 7,300 it was really scrutinized, and so and all these will have the facilities were inside. And then if we are to really continue to use them, and there were approximately 2,300 of them going to be continuously used. And so tracing all the others, and I think this is a character specific to Japan, and the land prices in Tokyo is higher. And by developing all this, we will be able to realize the unrealized profits. But we have to really remove the facilities. And well, with that being estimated, and then there are 50 of the properties which could be profitable. But this is based upon the tracing as of today. And PSTN is going to go away, and the copper wire will be replaced by wireless. And if you have this kind of changes, structurally, all the numbers will become totally different. And so based upon the land price as of today, and even spending on the cost to remove facilities, these could be the profitable properties. And if we have more of the wisdom, and if there are more need for different sort of properties, we will see an entirely different business model, which would change the numbers. And this is just one illustration that we have. Thank you.
では次のご質問。
Thank you very much. Next question, please. Then we'd like to go on to the gentleman in the back. Yes, the gentleman in the suit, please. Thank you. Thank you, Merrill Lynch. Kinoshita is my name. 2 questions, if I may. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Kinoshita just asked. So you talked about 50 locations. You have already scrutinized and come up with 50 centers. Is it better for you to develop on a standalone basis, or do you want to involve other stakeholders and land title holders in the vicinity? Do you have a breakdown as to what do you have a breakdown as to the number of properties whereby you want to pursue on a standalone basis, and where you want to pursue together with partners? Well, thank you very much. It's still a simulation, so it's based on a standalone basis. Of course, if possible, we want to involve the regional community. We want to involve the regional community and heighten added value. So that is our basic thinking. Yes, I agree with that. For example, so the telephone exchanges, telephone stations, you have equipment in place, and you have people, you have personnel who need to maintain, and that is in the center of the urban setting, in the urban center. And for the regional communities, that is not a very happy environment, because it is a prime location. It's important that you have people moving thereabouts. It's important that such location be transformed into something that can be leveraged by people in the community. And that, by doing that, this will be meaningful for the local community. So that's how we want to use the properties. If we really want to involve the regional community and people in the surrounding environment, that is always on our mind. At the same time, not all can be conducive for such a model, and some communities may not be in favor of that, so it will vary from place to place. But in principle, we don't want to pursue this on a standalone basis. Hopefully, we'll be able to work with partners. And that's the environment that we want to create to the extent possible. That is our position. I see. Well, you talked about this in the presentation. You mentioned that it's a time-consuming process. Is that what you meant when you said that this could be time-consuming? Yes, that is one case. And also, there's preparation phase, and the construction to take out the equipment can also be time-consuming. We also need to get the consent of the customer. So that is why I said that it's going to be a time-consuming process. Oh, I see. So unrealized assets. Well, you talked about this, Mr. Kikuchi, earlier. It's very difficult for us to comment directly on your question. I just cited one example. 50 is simply one example. I say thank you. My second question, the Las Vegas project and other possible cases down the road. Right now, data is going to be stored in your data center, and the analysis will be carried out by yourself. But going forward, the analysis part, depending on the sector, are going to involve other companies, or will it involve competition, do you think? Is there such a possibility? Should we be prepared for that possibility? Or should we, do we not need to be concerned about such possibility? How does NTT see the possibilities of this scenario? Thank you. Well, in principle, I think the assumption is that it's going to be an open environment. Other parties are likely to come into the marketplace. Of course, we'll certainly do to the extent possible. And if there are other parties with better solutions, then third parties should also be involved. But the basis and the foundation and the platform that we're offering, it is a platform that can connect with multi-vendor, multi-systems. So even if third parties' analysis are to be utilized, then that system and the overall system can be pursued, can be connected through our entity's orchestration. And VMware and ourselves will carry out the virtualization part. So who does the analysis? Regardless of who does the analysis, we have a platform that can accommodate all possibilities, and we are preparing such an open platform. So as Mr. Sherwood mentioned earlier, that type of assumption, that type of proposal is not being proposed by any other company outside NTT. We are the only ones putting forward such a proposal. It just so happens that we have edge routers for our data center. It's called the micro centers. It's actually it's a manually made operations, and we actually brought a lot of pieces through suitcases. But in any event, so collecting data will probably be NTT's role, and the final analysis could be done by any other parties, depending on the scenario. Perhaps I do not yet have a full understanding of the situation, but if I may ask the following. Let's assume that the infrastructure and the foundation, the platform that you're providing, and the analysis part, let's just assume that there are two separate businesses. If they divide into two separate businesses, which of these businesses is more conducive for higher added value? Very difficult question to respond. I think if you can divide it into three. So analysis part, the application part, and the final solution part, and the foundation part. So foundation, for what I mean platform, and then infrastructure, where you store equipment and connection to networks. So if you divide it into three parts, we have the capability in the foundation part, in the platform part. That is where we have our capabilities. When it comes to infrastructure, there could be other cheaper ones available, perhaps, and then the customer may want to use cheaper infrastructure, but then it's offered in a package fashion. So volume-wise, the platform part is profitable. The core, sorry, I made a mistake. Infrastructure is more visible, and the platform part is where we have the capability. And the analysis part, and the analytics part, we just embarked on this. A lot of different scenarios are out there. We cannot cover all possible scenarios. And so I think that is the structure we have in place. Sorry, if I could ask the final question. The platform. Let's carve out the platform. Let's say that the data is to be owned by cities. So then what is going to be your strength? So the IT infrastructure part. Someone could come in, and then the platform. Maybe a third party may propose a different, similar platform. That would be our direct competition. So it's a matter of who has the higher capability. So, but it could be vendors or softwares. They're fixated on their own software. So vendors and software vendors probably are fixated on their own. So I think the open structure is probably more conducive for players like ourselves, because they all are looking for vertical integration, and that is not going to be favorable. That's not going to be favorable with customers. I say thank you very much.
それではもう第2部の
And we are to shortly start part 2, so we would like to take the one final question. Yes. Moriyuki from SMBC. And I was really wanted to ask the same question just raised now. And in the answer given by the president, there's not going to be the competition. As of today, you don't have the competition. And also the representative from the city of Las Vegas was really said that it was the one and only sort of the solution provider. And eventually, personally, I think there is going to be more of the demands. And is it going to be very difficult for the competitors or other players to become your competitors? And of course, it just boils down whether they are really willing to do so or not. And the way we partner, and then, without having the cloud, and then in case of Amazon and others, and then also packaging, without packaging and software and Microsoft. or data will not be well owned, and such as Google. And if there are the way of the entry, there could be such competition. But a good example is the city of Las Vegas, and we have already made progress already, and then with the on the collaboration level has really been grown. And this is really very fit to a consortium. And then if they are to really are going to catch up with us, parts manufacturer can really be able to catch up, but not in a comprehensive way. And 2 points: open platform, and with the ownership, we are not really owning the data, and these two are the competitive advantages. I think we're at the entry point that was really the competitive advantage. But of course, in case of the Las Vegas, if they are really going to expand the added value or not, I think it all depends on each individual project and the real estate and the development side. And we are to really bring together all of the capabilities within the group, and I think that's what you really want to really achieve. And from the other developers and your IT-related technology, if they want to use your IT technology, it could be you could be a little exclusive, and then depending on the sales capabilities and planning capabilities of others, and if you find a good land, and then probably the IT technology, I think we are not really hesitant to offer our IT technology to these players. And then hopefully they are going to partner with NTT Urban Development, UD, and facilities. We are not really focusing just only on UD and our facilities. Of course, they are our group companies, but if somebody else wants to make use of our capability that we use, then we will be willing to really offer. And UD will be reducing the external projects and to really increase the number of major projects, taking advantage of the internal assets. We are not saying that we are going to decrease the number of the external projects. We want to really continue to expand the number of these external projects, and we have gone for the external acquisitions, and then we are really going to expand the scope of such. Rather, thank you. And we are offering AI, IoT solution services already. We are really offering it to our partners and also sell them to these partners. In that sense, we are not really enclosing our technology with ourselves. That's not the policy. And wholesale and retail, and probably you can really look at they were both that we will be engaged both in wholesale business and the retail business. And NTT Docomo and SoftBank are really competing, but from NTT East and West are really offering the circuits to wholesaling into the other party. And so we are pursuing these two business models. Did it answer to your question? And we'd like to now conclude the general Q&A session. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.